We're here with Unity Minister Grace Merrick. We're just going to ask her a few questions just to see what her thoughts on the Unity movement are. So you're a Unity Minister, Grace.
Yes.
Now, what is the Unity movement?
Well, what is the Unity movement? The Unity movement began with a healing of Myrtle Fillmore, the wife of Charles Fillmore, back in the middle of later part of the 1800s, and she got the idea about the actual thing that healed her of tuberculosis from studying with Emma Curtis Hopkins, and they were involved with Nona Brooks, early members of what we call the New Thought movement. So Unity's always been a part of New Thought, which includes religious science, divine science, and a variety of other names within the New Thought movement. But what happened was Myrtle got the idea that because she was a child of God, she didn't have to inherit the tuberculosis as she'd been told she would. And she was manifesting it. She was really upstairs, in bed, dying. 6 months to live, they said. And she got the idea and started working with it. I'm a child of God. I do not inherit sickness. And so she denied the power of the belief in sickness and affirmed her oneness with God's life. And what happened was she actually got better. And much to everyone's surprise, she had 2 small children and a husband, and her mother-in-law was looking after her and the family because she was so ill. But she started to get better. As a matter of fact, Mrs. Fillmore lived for another 40 years and had another child. And then her husband, Charles, saw what was going on, and he too had been studying into the ideas that were part of New Thought. And they'd been investigating all sorts of avenues of the message of healing within the Jesus message. And he thought, well, if this is working, there must be some principles. So he set to work to find out and look at what the principles were. And so that's where Unity is based on the principles of healing. It's also very much based on wanting to get to the truth, the nitty-gritty of the teachings and examples given by Jesus.
So given the example you just gave, would it be fair to say that Myrtle was an equal partner, if not the beginning point of the evolution of the Unity movement?
Oh, absolutely. We refer to Charles and Myrtle as co-founders. We know that for sure. And Myrtle, what happened was then people started to find out that Myrtle was better, and she realised she had to go downstairs and start doing the housework, take part in the thing, and she became very actively involved in life again. And people heard about it and would write to her and say, oh, please, Mrs. Fillmore, pray for Auntie Maud, or whatever it was. And she would say, no, I will not pray for Auntie Maud. I will pray with the same spirit of life, love and wisdom that is within Auntie Maud. And so it's very important in our prayer work in Unity, and very important to me, that we realise when we are praying with someone, we are praying with the spirit of life, love and wisdom within them, the presence of God, realising that they're not separate from us or from the presence of God, that there is that spirit of life, love and wisdom in each one of us. And that's absolutely intrinsic to Unity's belief that everyone and every part of the creationing, everything in the physical world is expressing the life force, as George Bernard Shaw called it, the spark of the divine, the light within them, that everything is energy vibrating and that we are all connected with it.
So you said that earlier that Unity came about as part of the New Thought movement.
Yes.
When did that movement begin?
Well, that's really hard to say because some of the people, I mean, through the ages, through the centuries, Socrates, all sorts of people have been talking about the same principle. The principle of oneness with God, or the creative principle, or the energy of the universe, or as thank heavens modern science has really proved it in quantum physics and such like, all through the centuries, other people have been saying the same thing.
I can follow what you're saying there. I would definitely agree with that. But is there a recent date, a year, a point in time where we can pin down where New Thought may have sort of been codified into a set of practices?
Well, that's very tricky to say because the New Thought movement is a movement, and I would say that it really came into its own in the mid to late part of the 1800s. But a variety of people, a lot of people picked up on the discoveries that Phineas Parkhurst Quimby came across in New England, and Emma Curtis Hopkins realised about what he was doing and what some other people, Nona Brooks, various people got onto it. But our stream of that is through Emma Curtis Hopkins and in conjunction with Nona Brooks, who was the person who was one of the co-founders of the Divine Science Group. But there have been many people around that time who were looking at these various things. Unity just happened to grow because the letters that came to Mrs. Fillmore became part of what we call then Silent Unity Prayer Ministry. And Mr. Fillmore used to meditate every night, and then they inaugurated a time where people would know that in Kansas City, Missouri, where they were, they would be praying at a certain time, and they'd link in to do the affirmative prayer, knowing first that there is one presence and one power in the universe, in the world, in our lives, and it's God, and it's good. And then knowing that that presence was within the person with whom they were praying, not for whom, with whom they were praying, and knowing that healing was the natural condition for any ill, apparent ill in the human being. And the big thing was that they also learnt that we needed to look at our thoughts and our beliefs. And a lot of work goes into looking at the beliefs and stuff and the thoughts that we've had that have come to us through what has been shared with us through the years, from our family of origin, from the churches, whatever. And we have to look at our beliefs and see how our beliefs are manifesting, becoming made present in today's life from the beliefs we hold about ourselves, such as Mrs. Fillmore having been told that she was going to inherit tuberculosis. And when she realised she didn't have to believe that, she could change her thoughts into saying, no, God is the truth of my life and my being, and I don't have to have anything separating me from God's life. Does that make sense?
Indeed it does. Now, I'm familiar enough with the works of Fillmore, of both the Fillmores and Unity, to be well aware that something called universal laws or universal teachings, the core part of your ideology, way of doing things. For those watching, listening, what is a universal law exactly?
That there's only one presence and one power in the universe, in the world, and in my life, and in your life, and it is God, and it's good. One of the things I love to point out is that the word God and the word good both come from the German language, and they actually come from the same root meaning the same word. So God the good, and the goodness is what we look for in things. Now, do people have not good behaviour, not nice behaviour, unpleasant things? Yep, but it's only because they have a belief in their separation from their goodness, and it's not they're not wicked, terrible, awful, unforgivable for being like that. And we've all made mistakes. We've all had mistakes about ourselves. But we see that there is a presence and a power within each person that has them capable of being the very best that they can be. It's great fun to see that there is actual goodness, godness, life in other people and other parts of the creation. It's much more fun that way. People often ask me what I do, and I say, I teach people how to have more fun. Because there's more joy, there's more fun when we can see, without being pious about forgiveness, we can see before the person sees for themselves that they are the expression of God. We say that we see before the person may know it for themselves, that they are the expression of God. And that's very super fun.
A powerful idea as well.
It works.
Just on the subject of universal law, are you familiar with the movie The Secret?
Yep.
Did you have any comment on the way the law of attraction as it's espoused in the
yes,
movie?
I certainly do. Well, the law of attraction's been called the law of attraction and talked about for over 200 years. In fact, I came across a reference to it from an early writing in about the 15th century. Because there have been mystics through the ages. But what it really means is thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. That's what we call a unity pat answer. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. If I go out into the day thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a hard time getting into the parking station or where I want to go to the shops, and oh my goodness me, the traffic's going to be awful, and oh gosh, people are going to cut in front of me, and oh, I won't get a parking place, and oh dear, there's going to be a mess in the supermarket. And if I go off with that kind of thinking in the morning or the afternoon or any time I'm going off to the supermarket, I will flat out guarantee you I'll have all that happen to me. If I go off thinking, wow, I wonder what experience I'm going to have today, seeing the beauty in people, seeing the Christ in people, seeing the goodness in people. If I go off thinking, all those people are going to be so sweet and I'm going to say hello to them. If I go off that way, expecting to share my smiles and good thoughts with people, it's peachy keen and smooth. Now, do I do it all the time? No. I don't claim to be perfect in that sense of the world, but I know that the principle works.
So basically, whatever I'm walking around focusing the most on, whether I'm doing it consciously or not, whatever I'm putting the most energy into,
Right.
that's what's going to be
What's
reflected.
going to be my experience. And you see, we've got to get it, we're talking about our own experience. And we're talking about a perspective. You know, everyone looks at everything from a perspective of their childhood background, their cultural background, blah, 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 blah. Everything that's happened before. And we look at it through our own perspective. So realizing that everybody else is looking at everything from their perspective is very freeing, because we don't have to feel that they can affect us, or that they're blaming us, or we're blaming them. And getting out of blaming people, for what's going on in us is the greatest freedom. The greatest freedom is getting out of the victim. Instead of thinking we're a victim of circumstances, victim of other people, when we can get ourselves to see that we're responsible for our own feelings and our own perspective, then we can feel that power within us, and we don't have to worry about what other people are thinking and doing. It's wonderful. But making of the making of the movie and some of the people in it are people that I've known and loved, and the ideas that have come through. Part of what was in that movie is very much in the Abraham material, through the Abraham Hicks thing, and I absolutely love that because it's just right on with everything that I enjoy. They didn't actually take part in the final making of the movie, but a lot of things with the Abraham Hicks material is the background to that. Mr. Fillmore said something that I really like: unity is a link in the great educational movement inaugurated by Jesus. Our objective is to discern the truth in Christianity and prove it. The truth we teach is not new, neither do we claim special revelations or discovery of new religious principles. Our purpose is to help and teach mankind to use and prove the eternal truth taught by the Master Teacher. We see Jesus as our elder brother, our way shower, and our friend. And the biggest thing that's most important to me is we teach that Jesus is not the great exception, Jesus is the example. And so what did he do? He was totally inclusive. We were talking earlier about our interaction with interfaith stuff. One of the things I love about it is we know that the truth, the teachings are in all ways of religion, for want of a better word. And I remind you that the word religion comes from Latin, re again, ligio, I bind. And the basic thing about unity has been to say that we want to bind people, help people bind themselves again to their inner goodness. So often religion's turned itself into binding itself into little groups and saying we're better than you and all that sort of stuff. Well, our view of it is that the teachings and the principles help us bind ourselves to our own inner goodness and the presence of God. And our intention is to be the light.
Well, you beat me to one of my questions.
Yeah,
so
I know.
Well done.
I knew that question was going to come up.
One of the last things two things I'd like to cover with you. These days, in modern spiritual movements, there's a big push on prosperity.
Oh yeah.
Just for the people watching, how would you define prosperity? How does someone know when they're prosperous, short of having a whopping great amount of zeros in their bank account?
Well, quite often a lot of people who have whopping great zeros don't have true prosperity consciousness. Prospero, it means towards hope. But one of the things is that I've noticed with many people is that they are constantly thinking about lack. True prosperity is giving from what we have, not trying to get from what we think, to what we think we lack. And I think it's, prosperity should be very, very easy because look at the air. We don't have to, pay for that. It's there. We don't know where it comes from, but it's always there. The plants grow without bothering about, where the rain's going to come from, where the sun's going to be, where the things are going. The life force, the spirit within us is going to always bring us what we need. And I think true prosperity is knowing that as we give, so we receive. And when we give attention to people, when we give love, not only when we give money, but we can do lots of things about why and how we give money. But when we give of ourselves, we'll always have enough and plenty more. And I've got a lovely story I really love. It was about two people that somebody had interviewed. One of them was a very, very, very wealthy man, And they went to interview him about some of his life or whatever. And there were locks and doors and guards and there were gates that had to be clanged open and all sorts of things. And they talked to him about his feelings about how he'd made his fortune and what have you. And he rabbled on about how great he was and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, then they went to interview another woman. And she lived in a huge mansion. She had heaps and heaps of money. And she had built a business that was involved with giving something out to people that they wanted and what have you. And she had heaps and heaps of money. No locks, no doors, no guards, no nothing. The gates just opened and there they were. And she was living in this mansion, and they said to her something about, wasn't she worried about burglars and so forth because she didn't have any locks on her doors. And she said, well, if they really need it, they must need it much more than I. And they're welcome to it. And it's amazing. It amazes me how many people are looking, and I'm talking about consciousness, they're looking to have someone steal from them. And if you don't, how life can be for you. Because you don't have to be locked up behind gates and doors and protection and all this stuff. You know?
Yes, I would happen to agree with that point
Yeah.
wholeheartedly.
It's really lovely.
You know, thank you for giving us your time today. I should say that Grace did a magnificent presentation at Unity of Melbourne this morning, and anybody wanting to see more of Grace can find her on unityofmelbourne.org.au on the videos page. But before we go, reading is usually a big part of someone's introduction to a new way of thinking. Is there any books or titles or authors that you can recommend people have a look at?
Yes, well, at the moment I'm absolutely crazy about anything written by Bishop John Shelby Spong, by Marcus Borg, and my new favourite is called Saving Jesus from the Church by Robin Myers, Meyers, and it's one of the most complete things. But these guys who are all proper Bible scholars and all that sort of stuff, there are others. Please don't think that there aren't others around modern theology these days who there are plenty around doing these things, but they're my three favourites. Anything by John Shelby Spong, anything by Marcus Borg, and Robin Myers. And you can see, I think you can see all of them on, you know, on the computer and see what they're about and what they're doing.
Punch them into YouTube, see what you find.
That's right.
Grace, thank you very much. It's been a delight and a privilege to have you with us here over the weekend.
Thank you.